Hi friends, good morning. This is Dr. Harinath Reddy, Director, Shankaran IA Study Circle. Today in this particular video, we will discuss in detail about the restructuring of Indian education system. The restructuring of Indian education system. So our discussion on education system will be subdivided in the following way. So this general essay on education will be divided into several dimensions, and each dimension will be taken up for discussion in detail. So we can subdivide the topic of education into the following subdivisions. So this is what you should follow even when you write the general essay, keeping in mind the demand of the question. So how does this help? It makes it easy for the examiner to get to know what you are trying to communicate. So by giving a number of subdivisions, the bigger topic of education system can be better understood by the examiner, and this will reduce the burden on the examiner for getting to know what you have written. So the examiner gets impressed, and there is a greater possibility of giving decent score for your general essay answer. So the various dimensions of this topic include context in the sense why a focus on education system has become so important in the present situation. So what is the relevance? Why education has become so important, and for what reasons it should be very important for the central government or for the state governments. So what is the context or relevance of restructuring Indian education system? Then significance. So what is the significance of restructuring Indian education system? How is it so important for achieving inclusive growth? How is it so important for reaping demographic dividend? How is it so important for achieving egalitarian society? How is it so important for strengthening democracy? How is it so important for addressing poverty and unemployment in this country? How is it so important for dealing with unrest in this country? So in what ways a restructuring of Indian education system helps our nation? That is discussed under significance. Then constitutional provisions in the sense, so once we know what is there in the Indian Constitution, based on the provisions in the Indian Constitution, we can fairly make an assessment about what are the relative roles of the central and the state governments with respect to provisioning for education system, and what are the problems in the existing methods of provisioning of education by the central and the state governments, and how can the problem be fixed. So what are the various articles in the Indian Constitution which speak about education and what they speak about education? In addition, we have 7th schedule under Article 246, which speaks about 3 lists: union list, state list, concurrent list. So education is in which list? That also we will discuss under constitutional provisions. The next one, some of the important judgments, if not all the judgments, some of the important judgments relating to education given by the Indian Supreme Court. That also we will discuss under judicial decisions. And what is its impact? What is the impact of the decisions of the Indian Supreme Court on education? That will be another dimension of our discussion. Then policies on education. Since independence till today, what are the different policies at the national level which the government of India had come up with, and to what extent the objectives of these policies have been met, and if not, why they are not met? That's one more dimension. In addition to this, we will divide the entire education sector broadly into 2 categories: school education plus vocational education as one category, and higher education as another category. So with respect to school education and also vocational education, what are the different problems? What are the problems being faced by the school education sector, vocational education sector, and what is that governments have done so far to address the problems of school education and vocational education, and what further needs to be done? Under what further needs to be done, we will discuss the recommendations of several commissions appointed from time to time for strengthening school education and for improving vocational education. And then higher education, what are the problems relating to higher education, what was done so far, and what further needs to be done. So under what further needs to be done with respect to higher education, we will discuss the recommendations of several committees appointed by government from time to time. And finally, we will conclude the topic. Then let's begin with the first one, context. So why a discussion on education system has become so important now? The reason is there were a number of committees which were appointed by the government from time to time. The most recent committee being Kasturi Rangan Committee. Kasturi Rangan Committee. So this committee, it was a 11-member committee. Kasturi Rangan Committee was a 11-member committee. It was appointed in June 2017 and it gave the final report on 31st May 2019. Kasturi Rangan Committee was appointed in June 2017. It gave the report on 31st May 2019. 31st May 2019. And the purpose of this Kasturi Rangan Committee is to give recommendations for finalizing a new national policy on education. A new national policy on education. Similarly, earlier, before Kasturi Rangan Committee, we had one more committee, TSR Subramaniam Committee. TSR Subramaniam Committee. And again, this committee was appointed in October 2015. It gave the report on 7th May 2016. TSR Subramaniam Committee was appointed in October 2015. It gave the final report on 7th May 2016. So the purpose of even TSR Subramaniam Committee is to give recommendations for finalizing the new national policy on education. But subsequently, on the recommendations of Subramaniam Committee, there was criticism from the opposition political parties saying that this committee did not have educationists, reputed educationists, and most of the recommendations are not so useful. So the entire issue has to be re-examined afresh. So this was one demand made by the opposition, and accordingly, subsequent to TSR Subramaniam Committee, Kasturi Rangan Committee was appointed. But contrary to what the opposition had said about TSR Subramaniam Committee, the recommendations made by TSR Subramaniam Committee, most of them, they are very worthwhile. But these are not taken into consideration, and the politics are played out because a committee appointed by one government may not be acceptable to the another government which comes to power later on. And then if you take in the context of our state, that is Andhra Pradesh, after the present Chief Minister, that is Mr. Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy, came to power, he wanted to improve and strengthen the education system as well as healthcare sector in the state. And accordingly, he also appointed one committee called Balakrishnan Committee. Balakrishnan Committee. Balakrishnan Committee on Education. And on the basis of the recommendations of Balakrishnan Committee, Government of Andhra Pradesh is trying to strengthen the education system in this country. And already there was one legislation which was enacted by the Andhra Pradesh State Legislature. It has provided for the establishment of two commissions, one for regulating school education, one for regulating higher education. So they are known by the names Andhra Pradesh Higher Education Regulatory and Monitoring Commission, Andhra Pradesh School Education Regulatory and Monitoring Commission. In addition to this, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, a number of schemes are being taken up for improving the education sector in this country. For example, Nadu Nedu. So this relates to strengthening the infrastructure relating to education in the state of AP, especially the school infrastructure. Then in addition to this, Jagananna Gorumudda, and then Jagananna Vasati Divana, Jagananna Vidya Divana. All these are some of the important schemes which are being taken up in the state of Andhra Pradesh with respect to education. So if something of this kind is happening at the state level, even at the national level, the topic obviously becomes important for our exam, both for the UPSC exam as well as for APPSC Group 1 mains exam. So we must take note of what is happening, and then we must keep informed about the problems of education system in India and what needs to be done to come out of these problems. So that's about significance. That's about context. That's about context. So what is the context in which reading about education system has become important? I told you, because of a number of committees appointed in the recent past on education sector becomes important for our exam. Then the next topic, subheading, significance. Why giving a focus to education sector is so important? Why giving focus to education sector is so important is another dimension which has to be seen. So here, for this to appreciate, you must know what do you mean by inclusive growth, then demographic dividend. See, it was said that if India wants to achieve inclusive growth, a focus on quality education, quality healthcare facilities and skill development is inevitable. It is a must. Then what do you mean by inclusive growth? Inclusive growth is that growth which benefits the disadvantaged social sections, the disadvantaged sections of society, and also the backward regions. So if you see the economic growth story in India, it has been so far not very inclusive. The poor and the backward regions are not able to take benefit out of this economic growth. So if you want to ensure that the poor can get benefited because of economic growth, we must do certain things. What are they? In today's globalization era, driven by knowledge economies, a person who is educated with the right kind of education and who had the right kind of skills will be able to get gainful employment, create wealth for himself, create wealth for the nation. So if we want to bring people out of poverty and unemployment, they must have access to quality education, and also they must be given the right kind of skills. So it is education through which we can transform India within one generation, and we can help people come out of poverty and unemployment provided they had access to quality education and the right kind of skills. This is nothing but inclusive growth. If you want to take everyone along with the economic growth story and help in achieving prosperity for these groups, then that is called inclusive growth. So far, the Dalit community, tribal community, and some of the other backward classes communities, they were not able to take advantages of globalization because they are marginalized. They don't have access to quality education, and they don't have the right kind of skills which are required in the job market for getting gainful employment. So this is one importance of focusing on education, inclusive growth. In addition to this, Shashi Tharoor, an MP from Thiruvananthapuram representing Indian National Congress in the Lok Sabha, he says, education is a national security issue. Education is a national security issue. What do you mean by education as a national security issue? Nowadays we are speaking about something called demographic dividend. In India, we have the largest number of people in the working age. So less than 35 years, we have around 65% of the population. When more and more people join the workforce, when more and more people become young and they are in the working age, they will become an asset to this country provided they have the right kind of education and the right kind of skills. Otherwise, it will be a nightmare. That is called demographic dividend, demographic nightmare. So all those who are in the working age, if they have the right kind of education and the right kind of skills, they can get employment not only within India and even abroad in those countries where the labor force is coming down, where in those countries where the population is aging, our people can get gainful employment, create wealth for the nation, and they will be an asset to this country. That is called demographic dividend. Unless we invest in education, unless we invest in skilling, population by itself is not a resource. It has to be developed. So if we don't spend on education, giving quality education and giving right kind of skills, so this workforce, which is very young, cannot be of any help to the nation. So it was said that focusing on quality education and giving right kind of skills will help in reaping demographic dividend. Reaping demographic dividend. Reaping demographic dividend means taking advantage. Reaping demographic dividend. And then why Shashi Tharoor says that it is a national security issue? When millions and millions of young people join the workforce, and if they don't get gainful employment, if they continue to be under poverty and unemployment, they are going to create a lot of unrest in this country. They are not going to keep quiet. And for example, if you see the left-wing extremist movements in central India and elsewhere, and also insurgency in northeast India and also Jammu and Kashmir, one major reason why the youth are getting attracted to these insurgency movements is because they are unemployed. If they are gainfully employed, they will keep away from such movements. So that's why Shashi Tharoor says, if something is not done to gainfully employ the young population of this country, they are going to create a lot of unrest in this country that will undermine national security. Of course, Mr. Shashi Tharoor is very right in saying that. Then in addition to this, it was also said by policies of the government at the national level on education, that education is a central tool for achieving the education is a central tool for achieving the goals of the nation. For example, if you want to strengthen democracy, if you want to achieve egalitarian society, equal society, education is a powerful tool. Within one generation, India can be radically transformed through education. If you spend right amount of money on education for giving quality education at all levels, and if we can provide right kind of skilling to entire population in this country, then we will be able to strengthen democracy. Democracy in the sense, if there are problems like poverty, unemployment, and unemployment leading to unrest, and unrest leading to something like insurgency, that will destabilize Indian democracy. But by taking care of the problems of the youth through gainful employment, by focusing on their skilling and also quality education, we are indirectly strengthening Indian democracy. So, in addition to this, through education as a medium, if everybody comes out of poverty and if there is mobility, economic mobility, then it will also help in achieving an egalitarian society, a kind of equal society. And for all these reasons, restructuring of Indian education system, focus on education system is very important. So we had a committee way back in 2010 appointed by Government of India on healthcare sector, Srinath Reddy Committee. Though it is related to health, it had something to say about education as well. K. Srinath Reddy Committee. K. Srinath Reddy Committee. This committee says in India, historically, that means since independence, for a very long time, health and education were not priority areas. They are neglected. They are not given the priority which they demanded, and as a result, the growth in India is not inclusive. In the absence of quality education, in the absence of quality healthcare facilities, in the absence of massive skilling, we cannot help people to get gainful employment. And that's the reason why growth in India is not sufficiently inclusive. So keeping this in mind, in the last 2 decades, 2 to 2.5 decades, governments at the national and the state level, they're trying to focus on healthcare sector, education, and also skill development. For example, in the 11th Five-Year Plan, highest spending is made on education. So the 11th plan is also called Education Plan. And in the 12th plan, Government of India wanted to give highest priority to healthcare sector. And that's the reason why K. Srinath Reddy Committee was appointed. But unfortunately, the spending in the 12th plan did not keep in pace with what is required with respect to healthcare sector. So this is the reason why a focus on education system, restructuring of Indian education system is very important. In addition to this, if you see, there was one study which was conducted in 2009 which is called OECD PISA study. OECD PISA study. Organization, see OECD, it is a grouping of developed nations. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is a grouping of developed nations. So this organization has conducted a study with respect to the quality of school education. And the study is called OECD PISA. PISA means Program for International Student Assessment. So out of 78 countries which were surveyed with respect to the quality of school education, India's rank was 77 out of 78 countries. So we are number 2 from the bottom. This is where India is with respect to quality of school education. Even with respect to higher education, we rarely find any higher educational institution from India in the top 200 best higher educational institutions at the global level. So this speaks volumes about the situation of our Indian education system. This has to change. Unless this changes, we cannot achieve inclusive growth, we cannot reap demographic dividend, we cannot help in achieving egalitarian society, we cannot help in addressing poverty and unemployment from this country. So this is the reason why we need to focus on restructuring of Indian education system. That is the significance of restructuring of Indian education system. Then let's move to constitutional provisions. So what are the different provisions in the Indian Constitution relating to education sector? What are the different provisions in the Indian Constitution relating to education sector? I told under Article 246, 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution divides the subjects of administration into 3 lists: union list, state list and a concurrent list. So if you take education, education is in which list? Education is in which list? See, till 1976, education was in the state list. In 1976, through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, education was moved from state list to concurrent list. In 1976, by Mrs. Indira Gandhi government, through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, has transferred the subject of education from state list to concurrent list. Then what is the consequence of this? As of now, education is in the concurrent list. What does that mean? If a subject of administration is in the concurrent list, it is the joint responsibility of the center and the states. So central government has a duty and responsibility, and even the state governments have got a duty and responsibility to look after education sector. So education, as of now, it is in the concurrent list. That is entry 25. So in the concurrent list, there are 52 items, out of which entry 25 deals with education. Education, the entry 25 says like this: education including technical education, medical education and education, vocational education relating to training of labor. All that comes under concurrent list. So education, if it is in the concurrent list, the meaning is it is the joint responsibility of the center and the state governments to look after education sector. In addition to this, there are certain items in the union list with respect to certain higher educational institutions where the central government has the final authority. For example, if you take entry 62, entry 63, entry 64, entry 65, entry 66. Entry 62, it deals with some of the educational institutions which were present at the commencement of the Indian Constitution, declared to be institutions of national importance by the Indian Parliament through a law. So such institutions, they are in the union list, which means the union government has got the power over them. For example, Indian Museum is one such institution. Then entry 63 also speaks about similar institutions of national importance at the commencement of Indian Constitution, declared to be of national importance by the Indian Parliament through law. For example, Aligarh Muslim University, Banaras Hindu University, Delhi University, they are all in the union list, which means center has got control but not the states. In addition to this, if you take entry 64, we have a number of IITs and IIMs in India. They refer to educational institutions relating to scientific and technical education. So they are set up in India by the Indian Parliament under the laws made by the Indian Parliament. So they are also institutions of national importance declared as so by the Parliament through law. So IITs and IIMs, which are set up by the union government through the laws made by the Indian Parliament, they are also in the union list, which means the center has got control over them. 64, entry 64. Then entry 65. The union government has the final authority to decide the standards of higher education. Standards of higher education, including the research and scientific institutions. The standards of education, especially the higher education, it is a subject in the union list. Then in addition to this, finally 66. Entry 66. Remember, all these are in the union list. Entry 62, 63, 64, they speak about institutions of national importance declared by the Parliament by laws. I told you, Indian Museum, Banaras Hindu University, Aligarh Muslim University, Delhi Universities, IITs and IIMs. They are the subjects of the union government in the union list. And then I told 65 relating to maintaining the standards of education. And then 66. 66 is, it speaks about a number of premier training institutions established by Government of India. For example, in Hyderabad we have Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy, that is a premier training institution for IPS officers, and this is an agency of the union government under entry 66 of the union list. So the center has got control over it. Similarly, in Mussoorie, we have Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration for training the IAS officers. All such a training agencies which are set up by the union government under entry 66, they come under the power of the union government. And earlier I told entry 25 in the concurrent list, it deals with education. Entry 25 in the concurrent list deals with education. But remember, entry 25 is subjected to these entries in the union list. So if there is a kind of conflict or inconsistency between entry 25 of the concurrent list and entry 62, 63, 64, 65 and 66 of the union list, the entries in the union list will have precedence, will prevail over what is there in the concurrent list. Then that's about what is there in the 7th schedule under Article 246 relating to education. I told there are certain institutions of national importance declared by the Parliament by law. They are the institutions under the control of the central government, and they are mentioned in the union list, entry 62, 63, 64. Then I told that 65, maintaining the standards of higher education. Again, this is the power of the union government, referred to in 65, entry 65 of the union list. Similarly, 66, entry 66 of the union list, it refers to the premier training institute set up by Government of India, over which the Government of India will have the ultimate control. Then, what are the other articles in the Indian Constitution relating to education? One, Article 15 Clause 5. Article 15 Clause 5 says, the state can make special provisions for the socially and educationally backward class of citizens. The state can make special provision for the socially and educationally backward class of citizens with respect to admissions in educational institutions. So to explain this article, take the Right to Education Act 2009, Right to RTE Act. Right to Education Act 2009, there is one section, Section 12, Class 1, Subclass C. Section 12, Class 1, Subclass C, it says that even in the unaided private elementary schools, 25% of the seats must be reserved for the children of disadvantaged social groups. So Article 15 Class 5 says, with the exception of minority educational institutions, in all the other educational institutions, including the private unaided educational institutions, government can make special provision for promoting the educational interests of the social and educationally backward. Section 12, class 1, class C, subclass C is an example. Then why the minority educational institutions are exempted? Under Article 30, the religious and linguistic minorities of this country, they have an absolute fundamental right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. Which means, if it is an absolute right, the government, that is the state, cannot put any limitation, cannot put any restriction on their fundamental right. So the policy of reservation cannot be forced on minority educational institutions because of the absoluteness of their rights under Article 30 class 1, under Article 30 class 1, that is 15 class 5. Similarly, recently 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act, 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act added another class to Article 15, that is Article 15 class 6. Article 15 class 6, this relates to reservations based on economic criteria. So other than SC, ST, OBC, in other communities, if there are poor on the basis of economic criteria, they are given the benefit of reservation in public educational institutions. That is 15 class 6. That is one article. Then Article 21. Article 21. What does Article 21 says? Article 21 says fundamental right to life and personal liberty. Fundamental right to life and personal liberty. So in two important cases, the Supreme Court said right to life under Article 21 includes within itself fundamental right to education. Fundamental right to education. Fundamental right to education. See, for the right to life to have a meaning, it is required that there shall be a fundamental right to education. That is the judgment given by the Supreme Court in two important cases. Then on the basis of the judgments given by the Supreme Court on right to life being interpreted as including the right to education, fundamental right to education, in 2002 the Constitution was amended through the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act. Through the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act, providing for insertion of Article 21 capital A. Article 21 capital A. So what is this Article 21 capital A? Article 21 capital A was inserted in 2002 through the 86th Amendment. Article 21 capital A provides for fundamental right to elementary education for all the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years. From class 1 to 8, right to elementary education is a fundamental right. So to implement this Article 21A, in 2009, Indian Parliament has enacted a legislation known by the name Right to Education Act 2009. Right to Education Act 2009. Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009. This came into implementation from April 1, 2010, that is 21A. In addition to this, we have one more article, Article 24A. Article 24. What does this Article 24 says? Prohibition of child labor. So earlier in 1986, we had a legislation made by the Indian Parliament, child labor, prohibition and Regulation Act. Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986. So this legislation was enacted to deal with the child labor on the recommendations of a committee called Gurupada Swami Committee. Gurupada Swami Committee. Gurupada Swami Committee. So Article 24 speaks about prohibition of child labor. Article 24 speaks about prohibition of child labor. So in 1986, on the recommendations of Gurupada Swami Committee, a legislation was enacted by the Indian Parliament called Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986. As the name is self-explanatory, child labor, that is children below the age of 14 years, the labor is not totally prohibited, no. In hazardous occupations, those occupations which are injurious to the health and well-being of children below the age of 14 years, child labor is totally prohibited. Hazardous occupations, child labor totally prohibited, less than 14 years. But in non-hazardous occupations, child labor is permitted, but it is regulated. Conditions of child labor were clearly laid down. So the duration of labor and the facilities which they must be provided at the work site, they are all mentioned. But remember, I said that Article 21A, what does it say? Fundamental right to elementary education. Fundamental right to elementary education. That means for all the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years, it is their fundamental right to have access to elementary education. And to implement this article in 2009, Parliament has enacted a legislation, a Right to Education Act 2009. So now there is a conflict between a Right to Education Act 2009 and the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986. What is the conflict? On one hand, Right to Education Act 2009 says all the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years, they must be in the elementary school, no child labor. But the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986 says in non-hazardous occupations, children less than 14 years can be employed. If they can be employed, how can they go to the school? That's why there is a conflict. So to address this conflict, Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986 was amended, and this amendment says all the children below the age of 14 years cannot be employed in any occupation, either hazardous or non-hazardous. So there is a total ban on child labor for children less than 14 years. So all the children who are less than 14 years cannot be employed in any kind of labor because they have to go to school, because it is their fundamental right to elementary education. But there is one exception, family enterprises. So the children who are less than 14 years, they can help their parents in the family enterprises. That is the only exception, but otherwise the children are prohibited from taking up any labor. So that conflict was addressed by amending the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986. In other words, there is a link between Article 24 and education. Article 24 says prohibition of child labor, and this helps in children getting an opportunity to go to schools and to get educated. That is Article 24. Then Article 29 Clause 2. Article 29 Clause 2 says there shall be no discrimination on the grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex to get admission into educational institutions either run by the state or given aid by the state. So in all the educational institutions which are run by the state or which receive funding from the state, there shall be no denial of admission on the grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex. That means the minorities cannot be denied admission into educational institutions which are run by the state on the ground that they are minority. That is 29 Clause 2. All have an equal opportunity to get admission into educational institutions. Then Article 30. So Article 30 I told, Article 30 it relates to the religious and linguistic minorities. Article 30 Clause 1 says religious and linguistic minorities have a fundamental right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice, which means it is an absolute right because Article 30 Clause 1 doesn't say about any limitation. So the right of the religious and linguistic minorities to establish educational institutions and to administer them is an absolute fundamental right, which means there can be no restriction on this particular right by the government in the form of any reservation policy. So that's about Article 30 Clause 1. In addition to this, in the directive principles of state policy, we have some articles which deal with education. So first one, Article 45. Article 45 speaks about the duty of the Indian state, that is the duty of the central government and the state governments to provide early childhood care and education. So for all the children less than 6 years, for all the children less than 6 years, it is the duty of the governments to provide early childhood care and education. That's what Article 45 says. Then Article 46, it again puts a duty on the Indian state to promote the educational and economic interests of weaker sections of the people, that is scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other weaker sections. So according to Article 46, there is a duty on the part of the government to promote the educational and economic interests of SCs, STs and other weaker sections. But Article 41 says, which is directive principle of state policy, within the limits of economic capacity, the government shall seek to provide right to education, which means as of now we have given right to elementary education as a fundamental right. Why not right to secondary education and higher education is a fundamental right? The reason is the resources. The resources which are available with the Indian state, if they are not adequate, the state cannot give fundamental right to higher education or secondary education. So with the resources which are available with the Indian state, now it is possible to provide elementary education as a fundamental right. And this is because of Article 41. Article 41 says, securing the right to education must be within the limits of economic capacity and development of the Indian state. Within the limits of the economic capacity and development of the Indian state. Then in addition to this, there is one more article, Article 350A. Article 350A says, for the linguistic minorities in any particular state, the concerned state government and local authorities shall provide facilities for instruction, that is for education in the mother tongue at the primary level. So from class 1 to 5, for the linguistic minorities in any particular state, there shall be instruction, medium of education shall be in the mother tongue, shall be in the mother tongue. That is Article 350A, 350 capital A. So these are various constitutional provisions relating to education. Then we will move to the another dimension, judicial decisions. Some of the important judgments relating to education given by Supreme Court of India, Indian Supreme Court. I told that Article 21A was inserted in the Indian Constitution on the basis of the two judgments given by the Supreme Court. So these judgments are Mohini Jain versus State of Karnataka. Mohini Jain versus State of Karnataka. This was in 1992. Unni Krishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh. Unni Krishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh, 1993. Unni Krishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh, 1993. So these were two important judgments. Mohini Jain versus State of Karnataka, Unni Krishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh. In these two cases, the Supreme Court said, right to life and personal liberty under Article 21 includes within itself fundamental right to education. In other words, Indian Supreme Court has read that Article 21 includes within itself fundamental right to education. It is because of these judgments subsequently in 2002, the Constitution was amended through the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act and a new article was inserted in the Indian Constitution under fundamental rights, that is Article 21 capital A. Article 21 capital A provides for guaranteeing elementary education as a fundamental right for all the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years from class 1 to 8. And this is because of these two judgments, Mohini Jain versus State of Karnataka, Unni Krishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh. Then two more important judgments. This is related to Right to Education Act. Implementing Right to Education Act, there were two important judgments. Society for unaided private schools. Society for unaided private schools of Rajasthan versus Union of India. This was in 2012, followed by Pramati Educational and Cultural Trust. Pramati Educational and Cultural Trust. Pramati Educational and Cultural Trust versus Union of India, 2014. And what is the case all about? This is conflict between section 12 class 1 subclass G versus article 19 class 1 subclass G. So I told that there is one important provision in the Right to Education Act 2009, section 12 class 1 subclass C. So this is section 12 class 1 subclass C says, even in the private elementary schools which are unaided, which do not receive any funding from the government, they must have they also have a responsibility to reserve 25% of the seats for the disadvantaged children, for the children of the disadvantaged social groups. But the private schools, they went to the Supreme Court saying that they have a fundamental right to profession of their choice under Article 19 class 1 subclass G. Under Article 19 class 1 subclass G, it is their fundamental right to take up a profession of their choice. So by imposing a restriction, by imposing a burden on the private schools to reserve 25% of the seats for the children of the disadvantaged social groups, you are interfering with our right under Article 19(1) class G. Our fundamental right to freedom of profession has got affected because of section 12 class 1 subclass C. But the Supreme Court did not agree with their view, and they said that massive social engineering is being done through Right to Education Act 2009, and a fundamental right to freedom of profession under Article 19 class 1 subclass G, it is not an absolute fundamental right. In the larger interest of the nation, there could be reasonable restrictions. And section 12 class 1 subclass G is a reasonable restriction on the exercise of the right to freedom of profession under Article 19 class 1 subclass G. In other words, in this case, Society for Unaided Private Schools of Rajasthan versus Union of India 2012, a division bench of the Supreme Court said section 12 class 1 subclass G is constitutionally valid. It does not come in conflict with Article 19 class 1 subclass G. Then the next question is, does this reservation policy of reserving 25% of the seats, does it apply to the minority educational institutions? Because I told under Article 30 class 1, the religious and linguistic minorities, they enjoy an absolute fundamental right for establishing and administering educational institutions of their choice. In that case, how section 12 class 1 subclass C can be extended to minority educational institutions? And this matter went before the Supreme Court in one more case, Pramati Educational and Cultural Trust versus Union of India. Pramati Educational and Cultural Trust versus Union of India 2014. In this case, the Supreme Court said section 12 class 1 subclass C does not apply to minority educational institutions. It does not apply to minority educational institutions because the religious and linguistic minorities under Article 30 class 1, they enjoy an absolute fundamental right for establishing and administering educational institutions of their choice. That's it about some of the important judicial decisions relating to education. Then we will take up our discussion on the next important topic, problems in school education. Problems relating to school education. See, here you must know what is primary education, what is preschool education, what is upper primary, what is secondary, what is lower secondary, what is senior secondary. See, preschool education, it is for the children in the age group of 3 to 6 years. 3 to 6 years. Primary school, class 1 to 5. Upper primary, class 6 to 8. Primary and upper primary put together, it is called elementary education, class 1 to 8. Then secondary education, it is of two categories, lower secondary, senior secondary education. Lower secondary education, class 9 and 10. Senior secondary education, class 11 and 12. In the two Telugu states, senior secondary education is also called intermediate education. Intermediate education. So that's about what different kinds of education mean: primary, upper primary, elementary, secondary, within secondary, lower secondary, senior secondary education. Then what are the important problems identified by Kasturi Rangan committee as well as TSR Subramanian committee with respect to school education? The first one, there are a large number of teacher vacancies. Vacancy of teacher vacancies is one problem. In addition to this, even the teachers who are present, there is a lot of teacher absenteeism. So teacher absenteeism is to the extent of around 25%. In a given day, out of every 100 teachers who shall be in the school, 25% of them, they are not in the school. And most of these, they are not trained, they are not properly trained and not qualified as well. This is one reason why the learning outcomes is poor in the school education. There is one organization by name Pradham. It is an NGO working in the field of education. Every year it comes up with a report called ASAR survey, Annual Status and Education Report. Annual Status and Education Report. According to ASAR, a kid who is in the 5th standard was not able to read a text of 2nd standard. And a kid in the 5th standard is not able to perform even simple mathematical calculations. So this speaks volumes about the quality of education at the school level. In addition to this, according to TSR Subramanian committee, there are a number of teacher vacancies, teacher absenteeism, and there is lack of accountability on the part of teachers. The teachers are untrained. If you take Kasturi Rangan committee, the Kasturi Rangan committee says the curriculum at the level of school education does not match the developmental needs of the children, and the teaching methodology, it is substandard. So the teaching methodology is called pedagogy, substandard pedagogy. This was one more complaint. And in addition to this, if you take the preschool education facilities, this was almost neglected. There was utter neglect of preschool education facilities, especially in the rural areas. At least in the urban areas, the private sector has come up with the preschool education facilities. But in the rural areas, the preschool education is provided in Anganwadi center, but we don't have good number of Anganwadi center covering every habitation in this country. So there is inadequate preschool education facilities in the rural areas. In addition to this, there is neglect of vocational education. Why vocational education is very important? The reason is vocational education, if it is imparted at the level of secondary education, those students who because of poverty are not able to continue to higher education, if they learn life earning skills, then they can get gainfully employed and can come out of poverty to some extent. But though we had policies on education at the national level, the first policy 1968, National Policy on Education 1968, National Policy on Education 1986, though they have given a lot of importance to vocational education, not much is done with respect to integrating vocational education with the mainstream education. This was again one neglected area. In addition to this, it was also said, for example, in India, out of the total workforce, only 5% they have some kind of skilling done for their gainful employment. But if you take countries like United States of America, it is to the extent of 52%, Germany 75%, South Korea 96%. So in addition to this, it was also said that teachers in a number of instances they are deployed for non-teaching purposes, like during census operations, like during disaster management, like during general elections. In such a number of occasions they are deployed for non-teaching purposes. This is also affecting the quality of education. And then when it comes to some of the provisions of the Right to Education Act 2009, there is something called the policy of no detention. So the Right to Education Act 2009 says up to the 8th standard there is no concept of board examination, pass or fail concept. And when consultations are done by TSR Subramanian Committee with the state government, some of the state governments complain that because of the policy of no detention, the quality of education at the elementary level suffered. So Subramanian Committee says this policy of no detention in the Right to Education Act has resulted in the decline in the quality of education. Something needs to be done with respect to that one. This is one more problem which is identified. In addition to this, the infrastructure norms which are specified by the Right to Education Act, they apply only for the private schools, but not for the government schools. And especially in the government school, the infrastructure condition is very poor, especially the girl children, they drop out from the school because of poor infrastructure. There are no separate toilets for girls and boys in usable condition with running water, and even supply of safe drinking water and a regular supply of electricity. These are all issues. And as a result, TSR Subramanian Committee says around 1 lakh schools they are on the verge of closure. Teacher is available, but the students are not coming because the common public, they had a perception that quality education is not imparted in the schools and the infrastructure is also very poor. So there is migration of children from public schools to private schools. And as a result, there are around 1 lakh schools which are on the verge of closure because though the teacher is available, the classroom is available, the building is available, the students are not coming to school. This all speak about the neglect of school education. And then when it comes to elementary education, secondary education, higher education, Government of India gives highest priority to higher education, followed by elementary education, and the last priority given to secondary education. Then when it comes to the state governments, usually the state governments give highest priority to elementary education, followed by higher education, and then the last priority to secondary education. So secondary education is one area which is neglected. This is one more observation made by TSR Subramanian Committee and the Kasturi Rangan Committee. So given this context, what are the measures already taken by Government of India with respect to school education? A number of initiatives were taken from time to time. For example, in 1994, District Primary Education Program. This scheme was started in 1994 with respect to primary education for universalizing primary education. This is also called Operation Blackboard. So District Primary Education Program started in 1994 for universalizing access to primary education. Then in 2000-2001 started one more scheme called Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. The objective of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is to universalize access to elementary education. Then in 2009 came Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. So Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan wants to achieve universal access to secondary education by 2017. That is gross enrollment ratio of 100%. Then universal retention by 2020. In addition to this, we had one more program called Midday Meal Program. So this program initially started as a national program of nutrition support to primary education. So this is the initial name of Midday Meal Program. In course of time, this name was National Program of Nutrition Support to Primary Education was renamed as Midday Meal Program. And this midday meal program is now being implemented at the elementary level from class 1 to 8 for the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years. And because of implementation of the midday meal program, the dropout rate has come down. We were able to address classroom hunger through midday meal program, and we were able to increase the retention and reduce the dropouts because of midday meal program. So these were some of the initiatives taken by Government of India with respect to school education. Then what were the recommendations made? And then in addition to this, in 2009 I told you Government of India came up with something called a Right to Education Act 2019. So to implement Article 21A, Parliament has enacted a legislation called Right to Education Act 2009 for universalizing elementary education. So under this Right to Education Act 2009, there are a number of rights which are given to the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years. And then what were the recommendations? What were the recommendations made by TSR Subramanian Committee and Kasturi Rangan Committee with respect to school education? The first recommendation made filling in the teacher vacancies and then dealing with teacher absenteeism. In addition to this, the teachers shall not be employed for non-teaching purposes so that there will be no impact on the learning outcomes. And we have identified that there are inadequate preschool education facilities in the rural areas. So TSR Subramanian Committee says expanding preschool education facilities in the rural areas. That is establishment of more and more Anganwadi centers. And TSR Subramanian Committee also said these Anganwadi centers must be located in the premises of the primary schools so that there will be some kind of better use of existing resources available at that particular level. In addition to this, as the midday meal program was quite successful in reducing the dropouts and increasing the retention, TSR Subramanian Committee has recommended extending the midday meal program even to secondary education. Now it is being implemented to elementary education, and the TSR Subramanian Committee recommends that a midday meal program shall be implemented even at the level of secondary education to reduce the dropout rate which is high at the level of secondary education and also to increase the retention. In addition to this, the policy of no detention, that is the concept of absence of pass or fail till 8th standard, was reviewed by TSR Subramanian Committee. And TSR Subramanian Committee says because of the policy of no detention, the standards of education have suffered, and so the policy of no detention has to be brought back. There shall be no policy of no detention up to 5th standard at the primary level. Beyond primary level, the policy of detention has to be brought back to improve the quality of education. Here, Kasturi Rangan Committee does not agree with the TSR Subramanian Committee. It says that continue the policy of no detention up to the 8th standard. Probably the reason might be a student who drops out from the school beyond the 5th standard, if he fails in the exam, may drop out finally from the school and may come under the influence of criminal elements in the society, resulting in the rise of juvenile crimes, juvenile delinquency. So it is better, even if he fails, to keep him in the school so that they don't come under the influence of criminal elements. Probably that could be one reason. And then in addition to this, regarding section 12 class 1 subclass C, I told that under section 12 class 1 subclass C, even the private unaided schools must reserve 25% of the seats for the children of the disadvantaged social groups. TSR Subramanian Committee says minority educational institutions need not be exempted from implementation of section 12 class 1 subclass C, because section 12 class 1 subclass C is an exercise which helps in nation building, so there is no need for giving exemption to section 12 class 1 subclass C to minority educational institutions. But here I have already said that in 2014, in a judgment given by the Supreme Court said it very clearly that is section 12 class 1 subclass C cannot apply for minority educational institutions. In addition to this, TSR Subramanian Committee also says the infrastructure norms which are now applied only for the private schools must also be extended even to the government schools. So the infrastructure norms must apply equally to both government and private schools. And then it also recommended that to better manage the education sector in this country, TSR Subramanian Committee has recommended for the establishment of All India Education Service. In fact, this was a recommendation made earlier by National Policy on Education in 1968, National Policy on Education 1986. In addition, the most important recommendation, the public spending on education in India is 2.7% of GDP. In India, as percentage of GDP or national income, we are spending 2.7% on education. This is not adequate. This is not adequate. The first National Policy on Education 1968, the second National Policy on Education 1986, both have recommended increasing the public spending on education gradually to 6% of GDP. But we have not yet reached at 6% of GDP. Even now we are only 2.7%. At the level of Government of India, in the total public expenditure made by the government, roughly 10% is being spent on education. And these committees, Kasturi Rangan committee says that this must be doubled. Similarly, at the state level, out of the total budgetary expenditure, around 22.5% is being spent on education. So with very low spending on education, we cannot improve the learning outcomes at either at the school level or even at the level of higher education. The ideal requirement for achieving the goals of education is that we have to spend not less than 6 to 8% of GDP on education. 6 to 8%. 6 to 8%. Now we are only 2.7%. Now we are only 2.7%. So if you take the OECD countries, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD countries are spending on an average close to 6% of GDP on education. We have to reach to that level. And in addition to this, as of now, Right to Education Act 2009, it applies for the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years from class 1 to 8. But a Kasturi Rangan committee says the ambit, the scope of Right to Education Act 2009 must be extended to preschool education as well as even secondary education. In addition to this, I told that the curriculum in the school education is not in tune with the developmental needs of the children. To reduce the stress on children, Kasturi Rangan committee says curriculum load, syllabus load in each subject should be reduced to its essential core content. That's one more recommendation. In addition to this, Kasturi Rangan committee also says there shall be a restructuring of board examination to test only core concepts, skills and higher order capacities. In addition to this, Kasturi Rangan committee made an important recommendation this way. So Kasturi Rangan committee has recommended there shall be a separate independent regulatory authority to regulate school education, both public and private sector. In fact, this recommendation is implemented by the state of Andhra Pradesh. Probably it is the state of Andhra Pradesh which has implemented this recommendation for the first time. So the state legislature has enacted a legislation providing for the establishment of Andhra Pradesh School Education Regulatory and Monitoring Andhra Pradesh School Education Regulatory and Monitoring Commission. This was established in the state of Andhra Pradesh, which is the independent regulatory authority for the school education sector, both for public and private sectors. This was one recommendation which is made. In addition to this, so far with respect to school education, especially at the elementary level, we have been focusing on physical expansion, coming up with the concept of neighborhood school in every habitation and deploying the teachers. But both the Kasturi Rangan committee and the Subramanian committee, they say that if you want to deploy very efficiently the existing resources available in the school education departments, especially in the form of teachers, instead of going in for further physical expansion, it is now time to focus on consolidation. That means improving the infrastructure and resources in the existing schools rather than going in for new schools. Because of demographic transition which is going to happen in future, the enrollment at the elementary level is going to come down. So which means there is no need for further physical expansion. Kasturi Rangan committee speaks about the idea of school complexes. So in this school complex, there will be a secondary school as well, 9th, 10th, 11th or 12th standards. All the neighborhood schools will be attached to this secondary school. In addition to this, vocational education, even adult education will also be provided in the same school complex along with preschool education. So if there is pulling up of schools this way, the resources in the form of teachers, infrastructure can be more efficiently deployed. That's the idea. That's about the recommendations made by Kasturi Rangan committee with respect to school education. Then let's take up the problems in higher education. See, if you take the problems in higher education, I told historically since a long time, since independence, education was not given the priority which it deserves. So historically education was neglected, not enough money spent on education. So if you see the center-state financial relations, the revenue raising capacity of the central government is much more than the revenue raising capacity of the state governments. Especially if you take the state higher education sector, it is underfunded. Because the revenues available with the state governments are limited, they couldn't spend enough on state higher education. Even the central funding to state higher education is limited. In India, we have created certain institutions like IITs and IIMs which are doing so well as islands of autonomy with more financing, with more autonomy. But the same is denied to several other higher educational institutions. In India, we have created two worlds, islands of autonomy, islands of excellence and oceans of mediocrity. So higher educational institutions like IITs, IIMs, central universities were given liberal funding, academic autonomy, administrative autonomy, operational autonomy, and as a result, they were able to make a marked impact on higher education system. But bulk of the higher educational institutions at the central level, other than the IITs, IIMs, and central universities, and most of the state higher educational institutions, there the quality is very poor. There is a lot of political interference, and the curriculum in these universities is outdated. What is being taught in the universities, in the higher educational institutions, and is what is required in the job market, there is a huge gap. There is a huge gap between what is taught in the higher educational institutions and what is required in the job market. In other words, there is an absence of linkage. Linkages between the academic institutions and industry is absent. Linkages between research institutions and academic institutions is absent. Linkage between research institutions and industry is absent. Unless there are these linkages, it's very difficult to make the growth inclusive. So the curriculum, according to Kasturi Rangan committee, the curriculum in higher educational institutions is outdated, archaic, rigid. And the higher educational institutions, they don't enjoy autonomy in designing the curriculum and even in the pedagogic methods, teaching methods. The appointment of vice chancellors is not done on the basis of merit. Most of the times they are very much politicized. Wrong people are appointed. Even after appointment, they don't enjoy the security of tenure. In addition to this, the universities in India, they have neglected undergraduate education. If you see all the best universities in the Western world, they have a rich undergraduate program. But the Indian universities, they did focus on postgraduate education, but undergraduate education is neglected. They don't have a rich undergraduate program. In addition to this, to regulate the higher education sector, we have multiple regulators. For example, to regulate medical education, we have Medical Council of India. To regulate legal education, we have Bar Council of India. And there is a rampant corruption in the working of these multiple regulators. In addition to this, they have a overlapping mandate, and as a result, they have failed in the regulation of standards of higher education. That's one more problem. And in addition to this, accreditation of higher educational institutions, the existing capacity is limited. Accreditation means giving ranking to every higher educational institution, And so that once this is done, the parents and the students will have a choice in choosing the best out of the existing higher educational institutions. But because the existing capacity of accreditation is limited, we are not able to assess all the higher educational institutions, and if they are not accredited, the parents and teachers will have no information before them which higher educational institution is good, which higher educational institution is not good. In addition to this, especially at the higher education level, the service conditions are very poor for the faculty. They have heavy teaching loads, and that has resulted in low faculty motivation. In addition to this, there are other problems as well. We have regional disparities and the disparities across the social groups. Access to higher education is much better in the urban areas and in the relatively well-off regions, but not in the underdeveloped, backward and remote areas. And even access to higher education for the disadvantaged social groups is limited. That's about some of the problems of higher education in India. And then what the government of India has done. One, if you take in the 12th 5-year plan, government of India came up with something called a scheme called Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, RUSA 2013. Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan. So in English, this scheme is called National Higher Education Mission. Then what is the purpose of this National Higher Education Mission? As I told you earlier, the state higher education is underfunded. So under National Higher Education Mission, central government gives funds to state higher educational institutions. Strategic funding to the state higher educational institutions by the central government on the basis of the appraisal of the plans of state higher educational institutions. In other words, it is reform linked. So those state higher educational institutions which take up reform and improve their efficiency and performance, they will get more funds. Otherwise, less funds or no funds. This is one scheme which is initiated. So this National Higher Education Mission aims at providing central funding to state higher educational institutions, and this is linked to certain reforms to be taken up by the state higher educational institutions. And in addition to this, to make the higher education inclusive, the students from the disadvantaged social groups to gain access to higher education, there is something called Comprehensive Student Financial Aid Program was taken up. Comprehensive Student Financial Aid Program was started. So under this, the students were given scholarships and also loans, educational loans. And in the 12th plan, I told that vocational education, that is skilling, is neglected at the secondary level of education and even at the level of higher education. So to give greater focus to skilling, in the 12th plan, Government of India started, Ministry of HRD, Human Resource Development Ministry started something called community colleges, the concept of community colleges. So in these community colleges, the skill requirements of those areas will be met through courses in the community colleges. In addition to this, in the 12th plan, the retirement age of the professors was increased because as we are facing the shortage of good teachers at the level of higher education, 12th 5-year plan took a decision to increase the retirement age of the existing faculty to retain their services. In addition to this, if you take the 11th 5-year plan, in the 11th 5-year plan, the highest public spending is made on education. It is close to more than 11 lakh crores. Roughly 12 lakh crores of money is being spent on education. So highest priority is given to education in the 11th plan. So it is also called education plan. Because of this greater focus given to education, we have increased the gross enrollment ratio to 25.8% now. The gross enrollment ratio means out of every 100 boys and girls in that relative age group, how many of them have access to higher education? That is 25.8 in India. Then that's about what was done so far. Then what are the recommendations of Kasturi Rangan Committee and the TSR Subramanian Committee with respect to higher education? So Kasturi Rangan Committee, Subramanian Committee. Subramanian Committee says allow the foreign universities to set up their campuses within India. So if best of, that too not every Tom, Dick and Harry type of foreign universities. So reputed foreign universities must be allowed to set up their campuses in India, and this will create competition among the higher educational institutions in India. And TSR Subramanian Committee also says the appointment of vice chancellors must be depoliticized. It must be done on the basis of certain eligibility criteria, on the basis of merit. Once appointed, they must also be given the security of tenure. Higher educational institutions must be given academic autonomy to design the curriculum and to decide the teaching methods. And this was one more recommendation made by TSR Subramanian Committee. As the multiple regulatory authorities now existing in India, they have failed in their job, and as there is a lot of corruption in their functioning, both the TSR Subramanian Committee and the Kasturi Rangan Committee, they have recommended replacing the multiple regulatory authorities with one regulatory authority for the entire higher education sector. This was one important recommendation made. In addition to this, Kasturi Rangan Committee says the gross enrollment ratio, which is 25.8% now, has to be increased to 50% by 2035. By 2035, gross enrollment ratio at the level of higher education has to be increased from 25.8% to 50%. And as I told you, the single regulatory authority for the entire higher education sector is known by the name National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. Kasturi Rangan Committee calls this regulatory authority for the entire higher education to the name National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. Kasturi Rangan Committee also makes a recommendation that there shall be a National Education Commission headed by the Prime Minister to prepare the vision of education in this country. In addition to this, Kasturi Rangan Committee also recommended we have a body for accrediting higher educational institutions in India called NAAC, NAAC, National Accreditation and Assessment Council. So, Kasturi Rangan Committee recommended this NAAC, which is now part of UGC, must be separated from UGC and must be made autonomous and independent body. And the TSR Subramanian Committee says the existing capacity in the National Assessment and Accreditation Council for accreditation of higher educational institutions is limited, and this capacity has to be expanded. In addition to this, if you see the amount of money spent on research, it has come down from 0.84% in 2008 to 0.69% in 2014. So to give greater thrust and focus to research in India at the level of higher education, Kasturi Rangan Committee has recommended establishment of National Research Foundation. National Research Foundation. In addition to this, the National Education Commission headed by Prime Minister will also oversee, monitor the working of NCERT and also National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. And I told that at the national level, out of the total public expenditure, the expenditure made on education is 10%. Kasturi Rangan Committee says this must be doubled to 20%. This must be doubled to 20%. In addition to this, there shall be establishment of linkages between academic institutions, research institutions, and even industry. The curriculum has to be redesigned to suit the requirements of the job market. For this, the industry and academic institutions must talk to each other, and for which we need linkages between them. So that's it about the problems in higher education, measures taken so far, and the recommendations made by TSR Subramanian Committee and also Kasturi Rangan Committee. And then how do you conclude this topic? So you can bring in what you have said in the significance for concluding the topic. You tell the examiner that for India to achieve demographic dividend, to achieve inclusive growth, to strengthen democracy, to achieve egalitarian society, to address poverty and unemployment in this country, a focus on quality education and right kind of skills is inevitable. That's how we will conclude the topic. So that's it about restructuring of Indian education system. Thank you.